Lavinia, from your perspective, what are the biggest L&D challenges that are facing people teams, L&D teams, just people teams in general, HR teams in 2022 in terms of talent development? What do you think your top 3, 5, whatever comes to your mind, what are the biggest ones that are really gnawing at? What have you heard, and what are people asking you for help with?
Too many, to be honest. We would need a day to
Yeah,
talk about this, but I'm gonna stick to some that are very, very common. The first one that comes to mind is the lack of time to think more strategically, right? So what's happening is that we are still in a place where L&D does a lot of the manual work. And just to give you a few examples, like dealing with invoicing, that's a big task, all the admin work you need to do around that, not only for the sessions you organize as an L&D team, but also for reimbursement and for all the things you're doing as an organization for learning, right? So that's a huge task, and people, it's not even the most fun part of L&D, to be honest. And I actually know that you have this really interesting workflow in a nutshell where you basically get rid of all that manual work because they stop dealing with all the invoices from all the suppliers that help people. So back to your point, what people could do to get rid of that, I think when you're looking for any kind of learning tool, make sure that they can ease your this task list, if not others as well. So this is a huge challenge, and it's also linked to something else, which is that we think and we feel as L&Ds that we are still perceived as order takers, and the lack of time to think more strategically, to learn more about our business, about our teams, also plays into that. And what obviously everyone who's listening might have felt this if they work in L&D. You might have a stakeholder that came to you and asking for a training session, and we sometimes, it's not because we don't know we shouldn't do that, but because we have such a huge workload, we just end up saying yes. And that's that adds on top of our perception, actually the business perception about L&D, that we are just there to do whatever our stakeholders want, which is not the most effective way of doing things, which you and people that are listening might already know. So these two are big. And then learner engagement and learner autonomy is also a pretty big topic. Like, we would like to design a learning environment where people are more engaged in their learning process, and not just for the sake of it, but because they know it will help their careers, it will help their performance. So I've seen so many people asking around self-directed learning. Some call it a learning culture, and I think that's fair to say. So there are others. Oh, and just because it's a huge one, really close to my heart, measurement is still a huge problem in.
Why is it such a huge problem? I mean, these because we've known about these topics, learner management, people analytics, for a while. I mean, this is not new. Why do you think it's still an issue?
Well, I think it's very complex, to be honest. Like, it's not, it's not like in marketing, where all the data that you need is probably in one or two systems to see if your clients are converting into paying customers, for example, because that's what marketing does, right? For us, performance or behavior change, even if we were to gather data, that data is scattered so wide in so many different systems. And I don't think we have that technology, or we don't even have the knowledge, to be honest, on how to integrate all that data and say, okay, this is it. And we're still working with humans. It's not very clear yet how to say, okay, us as L&Ds had this impact, because there are so many other factors that play into, you know, performance improvement and so on. So I think the main answer to summarize is the complexity of it. It's not as easy. I came to the conclusion that it's not as easy as to put it into a framework, right? Because there are dozens of frameworks out there, but it's practice is not as easy.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those that, especially measurement, is always a complex one, right? Because no matter what you do, if you're measuring like before and after, let's say it's a 6-month program, there could be, you know, hundreds of other factors as to why performance is increased, or any, that's how you measure it. I mean, there's so many different ways you can kind of think about that. But we have a few ways of that we found as we're looking at more proxies. What are correlations, or when we make a change at a company, or let's say you know, if you're working on an L&D initiative and you say, okay, here's what we have now, we're going to implement it, here's what we had before. What we found has been actually, you know, relatively successful in the sense of giving an idea or a correlation, right? Is we like to start with, you know, I know there's some negativity about the ENPS surveys before and after, which it totally, I know it's not perfect. It definitely doesn't. But if you are running ENPS surveys, and one of those things that you're doing, and you're, let's say, running it quarterly or yearly or half yearly, whatever you might be doing, or if you're not doing it, you can do that now. We can give examples later on or below. Is you can isolate or have an idea. Let's say you have, let's say 5, just to make it simple, 5 different things that you're measuring on, and one of them could be talent development and growth opportunities, right? And so when you're measuring that, let's say a 1 through 10 score, just getting an idea of a proxy where people are at now, getting their comments. You can also figure out through exit interviews. And then after doing this, or let's say you implement your L&D program, and then again, it might be more than 1 too. So it's like, how do I know this one particularly works? But let's say you start with a few initiatives, or even just 1, and then later on, let's say within a half year, you again do that regular scheduled, here's the NPS survey. If we find that particular single element has increased, and we know that within the company, because you're an L&D or an HR, you know what's going, it has increased by X amount of points, doubled it, gone up by 2, 3, 4 points, or have an idea. At least you know that there's some kind of, within that metric, there is a positive correlation. Now, whether or not that has a, you know, can we tie that back? I think we can. I think you can tie this back to retention, and I'll give that's a deeper topic, but there are some ideas out there, and I think it's less about trying to be perfect and trying to understand 100%, and more giving an approximation of how you're moving. Think about it more, for us, we've seen it, think about it more of guidance. Or think about more of like, the wind is blowing this way, we know we're doing it the right way, and I know it's not perfect, everyone's going to have different opinions about this, and we do many different methods, but and every company is different. But this is definitely something, don't assume automatically, you know, if that you have to be perfect and it has to 100% correlate. And having even just a survey of before and after is better than doing nothing and being like, oh, there's too much, let's just give up, right?
I actually want to build on top of what you just said, but an actual example, because yes, what you are talking about is L&D's impact in retention, right? Which is completely different from L&D's impact in behavior change and performance improvement. And that's still very, very important, because we want to keep people in our organization, right? And we, in my previous company, we were doing exactly what you said. We had an ENPS survey that was is still sent every 6 months. And we had a question about how available do you think learning programs are in X company? And what we did at some point was launch, we had this huge program for over 800 people. So it was really, really big. But only 200 of them were in that specific cohort. And what we did was measure the perception of that cohort over time, and in comparison to the perception of people that weren't in the program, right? And first, what we saw is that it increased tremendously the perception about access to learning programs for the people that were in the cohort. But another thing that happened is that for other people that were not there, the perception still increased, because it's about perception, right? It's not about me joining a program. It's about, are programs available to me in this company, right? So if that's sin, if you see that people perceive the organization as having learning programs available for them, that's still a major plus, because people are looking for that. People are looking for growth opportunities. So yeah, good example.
Did you have, actually following up on that, did you see additional impact, or did people give feedback or comments saying, okay, we're seeing more programs, therefore X, or was it just like, this was our goal and therefore we were able to achieve that goal?
No, for the specific cohort, there were so many metrics. We were talking about internal transfers. We were talking like it was way bigger. Internal transfers was one of the most important ones, but we had other questions about that. I'm not gonna get into that. But no, topic. It wasn't just about perception.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have to talk to Lavinia about that. You reach out to her if you want to figure out how to do this correctly. But yeah. Last question then, with the biggest L&D challenges, is how they're changing for different companies. Because as we've seen, really, well, again, we'll talk about that too. Small startups, or maybe like a middle scale, 200 plus scale ups. Let's say you just started. Let's talk about the challenges of companies. Let's say most of the people who will be watching it, say 30 plus, 30 to let's say 200. What are those challenges that you find? And then of course, then we'll go ahead and go up. So starting at the first, 50 plus people or 30 plus people, what are the challenges that should be focused? Let's say the top 2 challenges, or maybe if you were coming in tomorrow and you're saying, guys, here's where we're going to start. What are you looking at? What are you going to specifically look at and that you're going to think you're going to have a problem with?
First is leadership development. That's something I've been seeing for exactly the size of the company you just mentioned. So leadership development is very big, because usually these kind of companies are in high growth, and they want to make sure that their leaders are prepared to sustain that high growth from various perspectives. And the second one is tools acquisition for L&D purposes. Like, that's a huge one. And as you especially already know, it's such a big market, and it can get a bit overwhelming for L&D professionals having so much information. So, making sure that you understand the needs of the company and that you understand the market, so you can link those two as best as possible. So I think these are the biggest challenges / opportunities for L&Ds in small companies.
And this is great. This is something obviously very near and dear to my heart. And I will say too, that to follow up with this, and you just mentioned it. First thing that we're really seeing is understanding first, before is there's a lack in the beginning because you're so busy. I know people teams usually, if in this case, you're hiring a lot, you're growing really quickly, you're hiring a lot. It's trying to look for a solution for something that you don't understand quite yet first, that's why whenever we work with somebody, for example, we will always start with, and you can do this too, an L&D, a needs analysis survey. What is the learning needs analysis? What do the people actually want within the company? What do they have now? What do they want? What skills do they want? Asking them, do they know what skills they want? We've actually seen at over 50-55% of people, through doing thousands and tens of thousands of different surveys, is one of the biggest issues. People don't even know what to learn. So understanding what should we be doing? Even if you give all the best content in the world, it doesn't really matter unless you have that guidance to start with. So that's a big one. And then the other one is starting that we've been finding is, even this actually would scale up even to larger companies as well, but processes, a lack of processes that support all the content initiatives that go with it. We see a lot of companies, and you're definitely good. I'd love to hear your opinion about this. We see a lot of companies saying, oh my gosh, why is engagement? It was like a roller coaster, went up and then it went down, and we bought all these platforms and all this content libraries. It's the best, it's the best. What we have found is it doesn't matter if it's the greatest, if it was the Library of Alexandria, it does not matter what you have if you don't have. But then we ask them, oh, how much time do you give to your team? Let's say your employees, let's say every week to learn. How much dedicated time? 0, nothing. Okay. Do your stakeholders, do your CEO support it publicly? No. Okay. Do you do check-ins with the one-on-one? No. Okay. Do you buy in with your team? Did you get them on board, or how did you launch it? No. Well, how many did you do any follow-ups? When's the last time you messaged them? 6 months ago. Okay. So, I mean, there's the processes have to go behind all the content in the world. All these leadership programs we're talking about have to be followed up by processes in place. And that's why we think and when we're doing something with somebody, and I'm sure you have experience with this as well, is establishing the process with the team lead, the L&D team, and helping you set that up in the first place so that everything you do after that is going to be very successful. The communications, the how to even write to people. But processes is being a big one that is the key to any successful. I mean, you could say this across any implement in any company, it's anything, but for L&D in particular, when it's something that if it's introducing new to the company, and they're like, you're thinking, a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's not that, oh, why is it so important? I have to do my work that, so you need to have people supporting it and have processes behind it. So I'll definitely talk about that more another time. I don't want to go crazy because I could talk about that forever, but Lavinia, what's your thoughts about this? What's your experience with processes as well? Is this something that's also come up with in your thoughts that's been lacking? And what are you thinking?
Yes, actually, whenever someone asks me, oh, I bought this tool or I bought this content library, my first question is, what behaviors do you need to support, right, for people to actually use those tools, whatever they are? So it's less about the content there, and it's a lot about the habits you want to see in your company and how you support those habits, those learning habits at the end of the day, or any other types of habits. So yeah, I wouldn't it's okay, you got that content library, that's amazing, you have the budget, you're showing that to people, but the first thing you need to think about is the exact behaviors you want to see people doing, and second, how will you support those behaviors on the long run, not just when you launch the library.
Yes, I could definitely go deep, maybe another time, but yeah, absolutely. As a starting point, think about those two processes, behaviors, what you're trying to, and then definitely look at learning needs analysis surveys. Start with that company. It's not too difficult, actually. You can do it for free on even a type form or something free to get companies using.
Yes.
100% recommend that. Okay, and then last one is going to be enterprises, or maybe not enterprise, but even 1,000 plus. And I know you have a lot of experience here. So what are the big ones that enterprises, 1,000 plus, big challenges that you're seeing?
Yeah, I would say the first one is measurement, right? Because when at that size, companies are looking to invest more wisely, I would say, into any type of resources. So they need L&Ds to actually argument their case, to pitch their case. So you need data to do that. And that's a big challenge. And another one I would say is also, at some point you need to scale whatever you're doing. And as the organization gets bigger and bigger, the question is, how will you scale all the programs that you have in a way that doesn't affect personalization, right? Because you need that as well, because everyone says that that's big, and as consumers of whatever content, we see that drives engagement. So how do you balance scale and getting people personalized experiences?
Yes, I totally agree. And I only really have one small addition with this one too, which is really going to be thinking about if you're an enterprise. I think what we've seen is the internal knowledge that your team leads have. This could be for product training, onboarding your team leads. The internal knowledge is as important, if not more important than even external skills training. So capturing, how can large companies get their team leads or their seniors or their experts or their mentors, that you'd say, to capture their knowledge and organize in a way that can be used for future employees. I was going to say future generations, future employees, future generations, future generation employees. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if that one of your senior developers for a particular, like, let's say a development team, has a great onboarding sequence for junior devs who are coming in, who would teach, oh, this is the new culture, this is what we're doing, here's our processes, here's what you do here, here's what you can be learning next over the next 3 months. If you can capture this, it's incredibly valuable. And also, so definitely take a look at what programs you have now that are going to capture that knowledge and structure in a way that you can distribute it and see how it's affecting your organization over time.